Welcome to the Go Find Out podcast. I'm Jennifer Jelliff Russell, author, speaker, and entrepreneur, bringing you actionable ideas and interviews with awesome women to help you pursue your dreams and achieve your goals. You can find more episodes of the Go Find Out podcast by visiting gofindoutpodcast.com. Enjoy the show and go find out. Welcome back to the Go Find Out podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Jelliff Russell, and this is episode number 48. Today, we are going to focus on the fact that sometimes shit just happens. As you can tell from the title and the intro, the word shit will be thrown around a lot. Just fair warning. All right, before we get into the show, let's jump into my personal update. 2 weeks goes by quickly, doesn't it? In the last 2 weeks, I started a part-time position as a program assistant, which I'm super excited to dive into. It's been really interesting so far. And I also, in this last 2 weeks, sent my spicy romance off to my editor. So I guess that means it's time to write another book while I wait for this one to come back, right? Actually, I've been putting off writing the next book in order to start the Level Up at Work podcast, where I draw from my 8 years of career services experience to provide advice and recommendations to job seekers or to those seeking to move up the career ladder with their current employer. So that podcast, it'll look a lot different than this one. It'll be a little bit shorter for each episode, and I'll have very few guests on it. But don't worry, I will still be creating this podcast because I find it so much fun to speak to the kick-ass women on this podcast. So I really want to keep doing that. I'm also working on building up my newsletter process for the Evergrowth Coach side, and I've been focusing on that for this past week, just trying to kind of figure out how to make everything work and to provide the best possible content to those folks who sign up for that newsletter. And this upcoming week, I get my second COVID-19 shot. So yay, I will be fully vaccinated. Woohoo! Pretty excited to get that because it means that we can kind of go back to doing a few of the things that we used to do. We've really only been doing takeout from restaurants. So it would be nice to be able to just even eating outside. Honestly, at restaurants would be nice. So looking forward to that. I hope that all of you have been faring well as we move into the summer. I am so looking forward to transplanting all of my indoor seedlings to the field out back. And also, I sell some as well. So I'm really looking forward to selling some of the fun tomato and cucumber seedlings. But here in Down East Maine, it'll be a little while before I can actually put anything into the fields, just because there is still the potential for frost. Yay, Maine. All right, that is all that I have for my personal update. Let's dive into the meat of the show. So, oh my gosh, listeners. So that last show with Joanna Penn, it was such a blast, but man, was it stressful to interview someone that I really admire. Also, I don't think that you'll be able to tell from the audio, but we had high winds here the day that I interviewed Joanna, and about 12 minutes into our interview, I'd lost power for a few minutes, which also meant I lost internet and the interview got cut off. Of all the interviews for that to happen to, come on. But, before the interview, I did everything that I could to ensure, everything went smoothly. I double-checked my intro and questions. I made sure that my mic and other equipment were in place and all ready. I set up the recording station with water, and then I logged onto the recording platform about 10 minutes early just so I could make sure that there weren't any, technical issues. The thing is, sometimes shit just happens, and there is nothing that you can do to stop it from happening, right? For example, I cannot stop the wind from knocking out the power to my house. So while I was scrambling to, reset the router when the power finally came back on, I was just thinking that, of all the things that could go wrong, that was not the one that I had actually planned for, right? So luckily, Joanna and I were able to reconnect and jump back into the interview, but I definitely really learned a lesson from that experience, and I just wanted to share it with you guys today. And so the lesson that I felt like I learned that day was this. Sometimes shit just goes wrong. It's really how we handle the fallout from that shit happening that makes a difference. So when the power went out and I lost the connection during my interview, I kind of started to freak out, right? Oh my God, I'm interviewing Joanna Penn and I just lost contact with her. Oh my God. But then I realized that that wouldn't do any good, right? Freaking out would not do any good and in fact would only make things worse. So instead, I kind of had to take a step back and set about getting reconnected to the internet and then the interview platform as soon as the power came back on. And like I mentioned earlier, resetting the router and just kind of getting everything set back up. So jumped on my phone to email Joanna just to kind of let her know what was happening. But she had actually emailed me first, so that really worked out. But I found that by staying calm Okay, yeah, like as calm as I could get, I guess, right? But I was able to get reconnected and jump back into the interview with her, and it ended up being pretty seamless. At least I think it sounded seamless after I did some fun editing. But really, just finding that keeping my shit together, right, and staying calm really helped me to kind of deal with that issue. Now, that example was just a small technical issue. And those kind of things, they can feel in that moment like they're the end of the world when they happen kind of unexpectedly. Like, other examples might be having a flat tire on your way to an interview, or a computer glitch or bug that wipes out the last 2 weeks of your editing or whatever project that you're working on. It feels like when that shit happens that it's kind of the end of the world in that moment. And these smaller examples of shit happening, they can definitely be a setback, right? But they don't usually change your life completely or, make you re-examine your worldview or anything like that. With these sort of small shit happening examples, you might sit in the feeling of frustration or anger or sadness or depression, right? You might sit in those feelings for a short time, but eventually it will pass because it's just small examples, small shit happen. And when that smaller shit happens, it is all in how we handle our response to it that really makes a difference. So when you get that flat tire on the way to the interview, sure, you could freak out and pull the tire iron from the trunk and start bashing your car for making you late, but how is that going to help, right? So instead, you could call the organization where your interview is at and let them know the situation and see if it's possible to postpone or reschedule your interview. When smaller shit happens like this, there is sometimes the potential to fix the situation if you're able to keep your head and think through your options. But sometimes really big shit happens, right? Shit that is so big and unexpected that you feel completely sidelined by its sudden impact. Like a pandemic forcing your company to let you go after 15 years of service, or your house burning down, or losing a loved one. Obviously, these are a lot harder to come back from or move past. When the really big shit happens, there's usually no thinking through it or coming up with some way to save the situation. It's typically out of your hands, and all you can do is manage the fallout. The big shit happening can completely change your life's trajectory and or how you look at the world. Sometimes it feels like it leaves an invisible mark on you that only you know about. With the big shit, while you might not be able to do anything to make things better while the incident is happening or sometime afterwards, there are usually options down the road, right? It might not feel like it while it's happening, but life can get better. When the big shit happens, you might not be able to manage your response in the moment, and that's okay. Or you might not be able to manage your response for some time afterwards. When you're able to start making decisions again, you might have to take steps to make things better because sometimes they won't just get better on their own. You may need to seek out help from friends, family, or a counselor. And that's one of the best responses that you can have when the big shit happens, right? Get help from those that you trust to move past it. But in today's show, I really just want to focus on the small shit because when small things go wrong, it's usually your response to the things going wrong that can either make things better or possibly make them worse. And keep in mind that this is not me telling you to be a positive Polly all the time. Shit happens, and sometimes that sucks. Feel whatever emotions that you need to feel. Be angry that you got a flat tire and embarrassed that it made you late for your job interview. But still do what you can to salvage the situation. Be sad that you lost all that work to a computer glitch. I know I've had that happen, and I am still angry about it, honestly. But then, try to move past your anger and make sure that you start backing everything up from now on. I know I do on several different drives. Your response to the small shit happening can determine how much you let those small issues affect your happiness and ultimately your life. All right, that is all I've got for today. Join me next time when I interview Playboy cover model Deborah Driggs about her journey from modeling and acting to building a successful career in the insurance industry. Until then, go find out. Thanks for listening to the show today. I hope you found the information beneficial and that it helps you tackle your own Go Find Out goals. You can find more episodes and the show transcripts at gofindoutpodcast.com. You can also let me know what you thought of the show by tweeting me at GFO Podcast or follow me on Instagram at Go Find Out Podcast. That's it for today. Now go find out.